First of all, I just want to address Ireland's relationship with the EU, first of all, and how this plays into that relationship. I currently believe that the biggest threat to the EU at the moment is more EU. The creep of power towards Brussels, of democratic powers from nation states, is creating great resistance through societies right across the European Union. And if you look back at Ireland's relationship with the EU, not all of it is positive, and that has to be outlined. The economist Paul Macaulay stated that the former Minister for Finance, Brian Lenihan, had a loaded gun pointed to his ear when it came to the ECB letter sent to the Irish government in 2010. Later, the new Minister for Finance, Michael Noonan, confirmed that he received a call from the European Central Bank President Jean-Claude Trichet blocking the imposition of burden sharing at the time. Noonan said that Trichet warned him that an economic bomb would go off in Dublin if Ireland pursued the option of imposing losses on senior bondholders. So Ireland, with a population of 1% of the EU, paid 42% of the total cost of the European banking crisis, a cost of about £9,000 per person, according to Eurostat. So we know at times the large European states make decisions on the basis of their own national interests and at the cost of so-called other members of the European Union. Now, legislation is coming thick and fast from the European Union at the moment. Most of it is unquestionably rubber-stamped here without any concessions to this House, and much of it is flawed as well. The nature restoration law is an example of this, a law handed down to farmers with rigid targets, with little detail on how it's going to be implemented, totally absent of the funds necessary to ensure that farmers can make a living. Another example is of the drift of power from nation states is Ursula von der Leyen's plan to create a European Defence Union, which clearly is the start of a European army into the future. A union that would make decisions on the basis of the needs of France and Germany, but would ignore the views of the Irish people. A union that would, in the medium to long term, expect young Irish men and women to put their lives on the line for it, but only for German and French strategic interests. And if you think you'll be able to influence Ursula von der Leyen, just look at the amount of influence you imposed on Ursula von der Leyen when she strode the world stage offering Israel a blank cheque for the murderous campaign of killing 37,000 people in Palestine. The Irish government with no influence over Ursula von der Leyen in relation to that. Now, the government is already preparing the way for the European Defence Union. The Taoiseach has indicated he wants to get rid of the veto that we have in terms of military issues in the treaties, and the Taoiseach has indicated he wants to get rid of the triple lock. And even the government's attitude towards sovereignty is incredible. The Taoiseach has stated that he wants nothing to do with a backward idea of sovereignty, but Aontú certainly does not agree with the Taoiseach. We believe that the sovereignty of the Irish people is really important. We believe that decisions made here by the people and close to the people are better decisions, so that we can actually hold the decision makers to account and influence those decisions. We, like most people, are supportive of the original premise of the EU, a trading partnership that works together in the interests of the nation states. And we seek a partnership of nation states working together. But what's actually happening on a range of different issues is this government is ceding significant power and sovereignty towards the European Union. Now, it has to be said from the very start that the government's policy on immigration has been an absolute disaster. I believe it's absolutely true that the Minister for Justice has been asleep at the wheel for many years, at least 4 years, and I'd say the only reason she is awoken is because of the work that we in Aontú have done over that period of time. It was Aontú that found out that 85% of people who received deportation orders in this country never had their deportations actioned by the government. And when I asked the Minister for Justice, where were these people, she said to me in black and white that she did not know where these people were. She could not confirm whether these people had been deported or not. It was Aontú that found out that 5,000 people came through Dublin Airport with no travel documents last year, which is, again, an incredible figure. Now, 2 years ago, I asked the Minister for Justice where people were registering for asylum when it came to this state. Now, I found it very strange that the answer given to me at the time was 75% of people were registering for asylum at the International Protection Office in Mount Street. I felt it was odd. I would imagine that when people register for asylum, they would have registered at the airport or the ferries. So I asked the Minister, how these people were coming into the country. And astoundingly, the Minister for Justice said that she did not know. Worse than that, she said that they were not asking the question of the people at the IPO office how they came into the country. So logically, it seemed to me that most of the people who were registering at the IPO office must be coming across the border. So 2 years ago, I asked that question of the Minister, and the Minister said she didn't know. She said that question is not asked. I asked again last year. The answer changed. The Minister said that the data can't be extracted, the information cannot be extracted from the data. And again, at the start of this year, the answer was the same. Amazingly, under pressure, the Minister for Justice then just a couple of months ago admitted that 80% of the people were coming across the border to register at the IPO office. There's a very simple statement in management, is that if you can't measure, you can't manage. And this government weren't even measuring the really important statistics to help us manage this issue for the last 3 or 4 years. And that has led significantly to the crisis that we're in at the moment. Now, incredibly, the government has created this new situation where they're putting checks on the border for people coming across. And there are spot checks happening in relation to people coming across on the border at the moment, and it is pointless. It is window dressing. There are 290 roads north to south. There are 10,000 fields north to south. Bringing people back to Newry just does not mean they're not going to find another route into the state. And the fact that Sinn Féin have supported that particular element of the government's policy is also incredible. For the raison d'etre of Sinn Féin was supposed to be to erase the border. And yet 4 times in the recent European election campaigns, their candidates stated that they agree with the government's policy of spot checks on the border for people coming into the country, which is again quite incredible. So, just another reason I believe that there is potentially a high number of people registering at the IPO office is because of people trafficking and people smuggling. And because you're not measuring that, it means we weren't able to tackle that. Another issue is people staying in this state on expired visas. I asked the Minister just 2 months ago how many people are currently residing in this state on expired visas, and the Minister said that she didn't know. She said that we have no mechanism to check exit of people from this state. Again, it's quite incredible that that answer is given just 2 months ago. Now, in terms of the EU Migration Pact, I believe this is another massive transfer of sovereignty. Nobody knows what the future is going to hold in terms of the future. We don't know in relation to numbers, and we don't know in relation to costs. But at least if we can determine our response to it, we can control the issue of numbers, or we can control the issues of cost. But the European Migration Pact creates a mandatory pool. It states that states must contribute to this on the basis of the fair share principle, and it means that we have to contribute either financially or be in receipt of people coming in to this country. That no doubt creates a situation where we could have to significantly pay money to be able to meet our responsibilities under the European Migration Pact. Secondly, the European Migration Pact can be changed in the future, and we do not have the ability to stop that change, because that change will happen under majority vote in the future. So we're signing ourselves up not just to the current regime indicated in the EU Migration Pact, but under a potential change in the future which we cannot resile from as well. Now, I would just say to the Minister that I asked the Taoiseach how much will the European Migration Pact cost the state, and the Taoiseach stated to me that he doesn't know. I believe this is an astounding admission. It was probably the first blank cheque that the Taoiseach actually signed up to in this government, committing to the European Migration Pact and telling us that they don't know. Spending other people's money is something that the government do very, very well, in fairness, and we can see that right through a range of different projects. But already the government is breaking so many commitments it has to the European Union that it has been fined tens of millions of euros on an annual basis to pay for those broken commitments. And the environmental commitments that we've made for 2030 are going to be an example where we'll have to spend potentially hundreds of millions of euros in fines in relation to not meeting those commitments. And here we have the government, hardwiring Ireland into new commitments in which there will be a cost. Because we've seen Poland and Hungary already state that they do not support this, and they are unlikely to fully fulfill this as well. And we've actually seen the European Union say that there will be fines and penalties for countries who do not implement the European Migration Pact. Many of the things in the European Migration Pact that could be potentially good for this country, the government could already do. So, we in Aim2 have long highlighted the fact that the government spend such a length of time processing people, which is neither fair on them or to the state, and actually creates a cost to the state in relation to that. Speeding up that process is in your gift currently. All it needs is the resources to provide for it. The fact that, up until about last year, thousands of people were waiting 2 and 3 years for their first application to be processed is incredible. And that, given that it can take up to 10 years when appeals are made, it shows you just how dysfunctional the system that you preside over is in relation to this. So many of those things that are positive in relation to this, you could deliver on yourself. The Taoiseach said we're only a small country in the middle of the ocean, we can't go it alone, but I'm sure people said the same to James Connolly and Padraig Pearse in relation to Irish sovereignty as well. We are better off being able to work cooperatively with other countries, but not in a situation where there are mandatory requirements that we don't control. And I will say that Minister Roderick O'Gorman's inability to provide accommodation has led to significant problems in this country. Minister O'Gorman has purchased 30 buildings 2 years ago for the provision of accommodation for asylum seekers. One of them is in use. Again, another example of a government unable to actually deliver serious infrastructure here in Ireland. I've spoken to many immigrants in recent times, and they have told me that their life has changed for the worse in this country. They've told me that they are receiving a high level of abuse and attacks, both verbally and physically, in Ireland. And they feel that the chaotic arrangement of the government has actually led to that breakdown in cohesion over the last number of years. Aim2 believes that the colour of a person's skin is of no more significance than the colour of their eyes. We believe that all citizens must be treated equally and fairly in this country. And I did talk to many people during the campaign recently who are from different countries and who are not white. And they told me of their children who were born in Ireland, who are playing hurling, who are speaking Irish in school, who are being attacked physically and verbally in Ireland. Young people who know no other home are being told to go home by certain people in Ireland. That is absolutely wrong. It must stop. And one of the ways that we can rebuild cohesion is to make sure that we have an immigration system that is actually implemented fairly and equally.
Okay. Thank you very much.